Lately, banks have been pulling back funding from porn companies. So JPMorgan Chase is now involved in a lawsuit with MRG Entertainment, which is a porn company. They don't want to back porn anymore because of, quote, moral reasons. Now, I'm pretty sure that everyone watches porn. I've done a little research on this. And yeah, everyone watches porn. Most people don't have a problem with it. But there still seems to be this morality attached to it, which I really just don't understand anymore because porn has become so mainstream. So is this just like old school ridiculousness?
I mean,
in the thinking from the bank.
I don't want to say I understand both sides because I really don't understand where the banks are coming from. I think the only real valid argument the banks could make, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, is that so many banks have recently come under fire for doing kind of like bad trading. And for doing, for doing things that are unethical,
for funding somebody who doesn't necessarily have the means to pay back the loan, or something.
And not just there's the mortgage crisis with the housing bubble, but also some offshore kind of involvement.
Hilarious. So they can do sort of financially irresponsible and immoral things, but when it comes to sex,
to me that's much more unethical. And I would see if there was a heightened fear about record keeping or whatever that might play into it. But that's not why they're not doing this. They're not doing this because they're saying that there's some sort of bullshit morality clause, and it's probably just one guy who doesn't feel comfortable. The president of that specific branch doesn't feel comfortable.
He's the guy watching the weirdest porn at home, too, by the way. He's the guy who's looking up like snuff, monkey, donkey porn, like acid trip, like that's what he's watching at home. And then
snuff, monkey, donkey.
I can't fund this because I'm creepy and I don't want to know.
If you don't want to be involved financially and legally, if you don't want to be tied to a company that is doing things that aren't legal, but the porn industry is legal. This is a fair business, and they should have the same treatment of every potential client, especially when they're dealing with government bailout money, when they're dealing with government funding, when they're no longer a completely private entity. They need to be, obeying these kind of fair lending laws.
Yeah. Does this kind of thing seem crazier now because porn has become so mainstream? Right. I mean, people are literally making porn right now in their bedroom with a webcam.
Sure, just
and it's become so, it's just out there all the time. We could all have access to porn right this second. We could all be watching porn.
I think
right now.
I am right now. In mind at all times.
So those fancy glasses.
All the time.
That's part of why it's so ridiculous. Is that now we all know that people watch porn. It's a $14 billion industry. Most legitimate porn companies have made a lot of money. If you're a bank, you're probably making a mistake not lending to one that has its books in orders and its numbers in order because they're thriving and they're not going anywhere. So it's kind of silly, just from like a capitalistic standpoint, for a bank financially to say, no, porn's not what we want to back. There's no money in porn. That's just ridiculous and foolish for somebody. But they're lending money to tobacco, firearms, spirits, alcohol, companies that make stuff with GMO, pesticides. I mean, the list goes on and on of people that they regularly lend money to openly that are actually really hurting people, and there's actually clear and present danger for using those products. And there's no problem with that, but porn, which is legal and personal.
We could talk about this. Could be every show for the rest of the year. But what is it fundamentally about sex? Because you're right. There's all these things that we all know are far worse.
I think it's also a fear. I mean, and I have to interject, and I'm not changing the subject at all, but I feel like
I can bring it back.
My particular viewers would be upset with me if I didn't say that I disagree with you about adding GMO to that list. But moving on from there, I personally think that, coming from a religious background and sort of being able to empathize with individuals who are religious in that way, even though I disagree with them, I think there's kind of a fear of judgment that comes from the sex stuff. There's like a shame component tied to it that's different than a lot of these other. There should be a shame component tied to most of those things in that list, but there's not.
It's true.
And so the issue, I think, is that, if we back this, if we're involved with this, then how are we going to be perceived from the outside? I don't think it's an intrinsic moral issue. I think it's a kind of a fear of retribution, and it's a shame thing. My big question here is this against the law? I mean, I don't know the legality of this.
I think it is. It is.
Yeah, there are fair lending laws in place,
and if you have a legal operation that's not violating anything, your papers are in order, you have whether it's your LLC or S corp, you have that in order, and you're being denied a loan just based on morality. There are certain companies that have, like Johnson & Johnson has morality clauses for their employees.
But those people signed a contract.
They signed it and agree, right? So this is involuntary.
Well, the lawsuit is saying that they're violating their own contract by doing this.
Because they're supposed to be able to. It's a fair lending practices, and once you start violating that based on it, that it's again a slippery slope thing, and you can just say, we don't like your past, so we're not going to loan to you. You at one point were a stripper, so now you can't get a home loan.
It's completely different than like a private restaurant who says that they reserve the right not to serve somebody. And even then, we've seen a lot of lawsuits coming out, even though there are some laws kind of protecting private institutions from doing that. But a bank that's almost completely public at this point, I think, is going to have stricter laws kind of that they have to uphold there.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, when I was looking at this story, it was reminding me of, did you guys see Boogie Nights? And, you know, Don Cheadle plays Buck, who is a porn star, who his whole dream is to start this small business.
Right.
And then he can't get the, he wants to start a stereo business. He can't get the money because they see he's in porn. He ends up getting it in a shadier way.
It also reminds me, and I know that this seems off topic, but in my way I'm drawing kind of a parallel here. When you look at kids who have drug offenses, kids who have been arrested for, you know, smoking a joint, they can no longer get government aid to be able to attend college. Like, these are the kids that probably need it.
I was a high school teacher for at-risk kids, and the high school that I taught at was for children that had been thrown out of their other high schools, and usually it was for smoking cigarettes, smoking pot. Some of them were no longer allowed to attend public school and have access to public education because they got caught with pot.
Yeah, and I mean, the interesting thing is that these are governmental practices and these are laws that are in place. But what ends up happening is it's like a self-propagating issue because the people who need the help the most are the people who are turned away. And I think that you're right. A lot of these people who work in these industries are working very hard to prove that they have a legitimate practice going on, you know?
It's legal. We just compared it to marijuana,
legal.
Which in the state I was teaching was
That's illegal.
True,
is illegal.
Porn is
completely
legal.
legal.
It's not prostitution. It's not human sex trafficking. It's something that's completely legal, accessible, and most of the country and most people not only watch it but enjoy it.
But for some reason, it has this veil of shame across it.
All right, I think we nailed that one. We were pretty clear.
Nailed that one.
Anything you do about porn and sex is always a pun.